Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm doing yet another 2020 TBR. I did say in my goals video that there were going to be plenty of them in January. So this time I'm going to be talking about the various authors that I want to try and get to in 2020. Now the reason I picked authors rather than specific books is to give me the freedom to explore the back catalogue and kind of see what fits in. Some of these are authors that I'm revisiting and some of them are new to me authors, and I've just compiled them into a list of 10 rather than splitting it like I did last year, because that ended up being too many authors, and actually half of them on the list for both of them, for both different kinds of lists, I stopped being interested in because they kind of never really should have been in that list in the first place, if that makes sense. The first author I'd really like to read another book from is Matt Haig. Now I've done quite well with Matt Haig so far. I've read 3 of his books and enjoyed all 3 of them. I think I gave all 3 4 stars or 3.5. They're generally a really lovely, nice, warm reading experience. It's kind of like having like a cozy hug. He generally writes very everyday stories with a little bit of speculative fiction or magical realism thrown in there. So for example, I've read his one, The Radleys, which is like a modern retake on vampires and a suburban family who all turn out to be vampires. There's also How to Stop Time, which is about somebody who doesn't age anymore, and The Humans, which is about a gentleman who's taken over by aliens. But they're all very warm and cozy. And the next one of his that I'm probably going to get round to, because it's the one I have on my shelf, is The Dead Fathers Club. This is actually a retelling of Hamlet and therefore links in with a few other challenging things I'm going to be doing in 2020. Not that I'm going to say much more about it then. Okay, another author I want to try and get round to is Margaret Atwood. Now I've read 2 Margaret Atwoods. I've read The Handmaid's Tale, which I really enjoyed, and The Heart Goes Last, which was one of my most disappointing reads of 2019. So I don't really know where I sit on the Margaret Atwood kind of scale of whether I enjoy her or not. So I have 2 more of her books on my shelves. The first one I have is The Testament, which is the follow-on from The Handmaid's Tale, which I've heard very mixed things about. And I also have Alias Grace on audiobook form, which is about a young girl who's accused of being a murderer. It's about her story. I'm keener to get to Alias Grace first. I don't think I'm going to be picking this one up for a while, but I definitely want to get around to another one of her books because I really just don't know if I actually like her writing style or not, and whether she really deserves the hype that she gets. At the moment I'm very much on the fence. There is a chance as well, like with any of these authors when I'm mentioning a specific book, that I might just go for one of her other ones. And Margaret Atwood has a huge back catalogue, so it would just be whatever kind of takes my fancy at the time. Another kind of basically modern classic author that I really want to get round to another one of is Daphne du Maurier. I read Rebecca last year and absolutely adored it. It was so atmospheric, that twist was incredible, such a good book, and that is very much her most famous one. I also have on my shelves The Frenchman's Creek, which is something to do with pirates and is also absolutely gorgeous. This is the Virago Modern Classic Edition, if anyone's wondering what this pretty book is. I also have Jamaica In, which is a slightly more well-known one of hers on audiobook. I don't know which one I'm going to get to. Jamaica In might also be something to do with pirates as well. I'm not too sure, but I'm quite excited about either of them, and I really want to explore her writing style a bit more. Dabbling with a couple of non-fiction options now. You should have known that I wasn't going to leave that off my list. I really need to get around to another Mary Roach this year. So last year I read 2. I read Stiff and Grunt. She does the most amazing like science writing, but with really specific niche areas, and then each chapter kind of takes on a different aspect of that area. It's very light, easy to read, very funny, but just jam-packed with tons of information. Grunt is about the army and the various different devices and things that science has developed to try and keep people alive in the army, or to try and fix whatever has happened to them afterwards. And Stiff is about the various different ways that human cadavers can help further science. So I have 2 more on my shelves from her. I've got Packing for Mars, which is about the science behind how we could genuinely live in space. And then I also have Spook, which is the science behind the afterlife and whether we could know anything about ghosts, essentially. Again, no idea which one. Probably both, if I'm entirely honest. I adore her writing style so much. Definitely one of these in non-fiction November, but there's no way I'm going to wait that long. And I'm honestly amazed, because I bought both of these only like end of November, beginning of December. I'm honestly amazed I haven't read them yet. Like, I can't believe that I still have both of them to talk about in this video. Okay, we're now going into the realm of authors whose books I don't actually physically own yet, but this will be really nice to kind of guide some of my book buying over the next year as well. Another non-fiction author I really want to read which, and this is going to be reading rather than rereading or jumping back into, to be a debut one for me, is Mark Kurlansky. This is so Mark Kurlansky is another sort of sciencey writer who again picks a very specific thing and talks about some of the, so Mark is a non-fiction author who picks a very particular topic and then talks about some of the science and social and historical cultural connotations of whatever that subject matter is. His most famous one is either Salt or Cod, both of which, as their title suggests, talk about salt in its various details, historically, scientifically, etc, etc, and Cod talking about the importance of cod fishing historically, culturally, etc, etc. I don't know which one of the two I'm going to pick, and this has been the main reason why I haven't picked up a Mark Kurlansky yet, is because I don't know which one of his rather extensive back catalogue I want to read more. It really varies just dependent on my mood and which one I happen to be looking at the time, so I'm sure this will be a really spur of the moment buy in a bookstore once I actually see his book on the shelf, and then I guess I'll read whichever one I end up picking up. So again, talking about a non-fiction writer, I really want to get to one of Lucy Worsley's books. So Lucy Worsley is most known for writing history books and very much sort of history of the home style things. The book of hers that I have on my shelf is Queen Victoria, and it is daughter, wife, mother, widow, and it's basically the story of Queen Victoria's life. However, there are another 4 or 5 books that Lucy Worsley has written that are on my Goodreads want to read list, and she is one that has a very extensive back catalogue, all of which looks very interesting. So I really want to get around to this one this year so that I can find out if I like her writing style or not, because if I do, I've just got like 7 or 8 more books that I can just immediately go out and buy, and I'll have a new favourite non-fiction author. So Lucy, I'm counting on you to be good, because I want to read all those other ones. Please tell me I like her. Going back into the realm of fiction, I have Susan Hill on this list. Now, I have a particular one on audiobook. I will put it here when I look it up. I can't remember what it is. It's like The Various Haunts of Men or something. But Susan Hill was actually on my list last year, and one that I didn't get round to. Susan Hill is most known for writing sorts of very spooky ghost stories. Her famous one is The Woman in Black, which I've read and really enjoyed, and I really need to take on another one of hers. I was in a bookstore recently and I was glancing down kind of just the shelves, and I didn't realise just how many other books she has out. There was like an entire shelf of her stuff. So I really have no excuse. I need to get round to one of them because I'm sure I'm going to enjoy them. It might be one to hold off until the spookier time of the year, but I intended to do that in 2019 and then just didn't read any of hers anyway, and didn't actually read any spooky books particularly in October, so maybe I need to knock out on that and just get around to reading it fairly soon. I also really want to read another Amelia Nothomb. So this is a French author who writes what ends up becoming, obviously for me in the UK, a translated fiction. I read her book Sulfuric Acid many years ago now, but it's one of my absolute favourite dystopian fictions out there, and she's definitely heavily featuring on my translated fiction TBR, which may or may not have come out yet. I don't know what order I'm putting any of these things in, but she's definitely one that I really want to prioritise as someone to try again, because I absolutely adored Sulfuric Acid, and I know she has a really, again, extensive back catalogue that I just really need to go through and pick a couple more and give them a go. And this is something that, the reason why I like these kinds of videos with the author TBRs is because it reminds me that when I enjoy a book, it's really worth checking out what else that author has written in case I might like more of them, because I'm notorious for just reading one of a various author and then never picking up any more of their work, and that's really stupid because generally you probably will like more of their stuff. That's been a bit hit and miss for me in the past, but generally you should like more of their stuff. One that I have not yet read and really want to get round to is Naomi Novik, specifically her Temeraire books, which is to do with dragons and the Napoleonic War. I know she's very big on BookTube for things like Uprooted and Spinning Silver, both of which are kind of, as far as I'm aware, fairy tale retellings. I think you've got Rumpelstiltskin and something Beauty and the Beast based in there, neither of which hold any appeal to me whatsoever. But Jean from Jean Bookish Thoughts raves about her Temeraire dragon series, and it's one that I was really keen on reading when I was much like younger, in kind of like my teen years. It was one that I very nearly bought in a bookstore quite a few times, and then I'm quite surprised that I didn't get around to reading it. So this is the year where I'm going to start that one and see if I enjoy it. I'm really hoping it has kind of slightly Marie Brennan like Lady Trent dragon sort of vibes, because I adore that series so much. I only have 2 left in it, and I definitely will need a replacement once I burn through those, so hopefully this one can function as it. And then the final, no, there are two more, apologies. These two are two more authors that I need to revisit. The first is Taylor Jenkins Reid, mainly because I don't really know whether I like her writing or not. Again, this is another case of having a very strong positive reaction to one book of hers and a very negative one to another. I read her two very big ones, which is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I absolutely loved, and then her one that came out in 2019 to a lot of hype, Daisy Jones and the Six. God, this girl likes to write long titles, and I hated Daisy Jones with a really strong passion. I have a very, very intense video about it. I'll link it down below if you want to see me rant for like 20 minutes straight. But yeah, basically, because I had such a weird, intense reaction in both directions, like Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was one of my all-time favourite books of 2018. Daisy Jones and the Six was the biggest letdown of the entire year last year. So I don't really know whether I like her writing or not. So I'm going to attempt another one of hers. There is one in particular, I can't remember the name of it, I will put it here, but it's something to do with a multiverse idea of like kind of a rom-com splitting in two different directions, which, as is somewhat known on my channel, I really enjoy that as a plot device. I have a whole video about multiverse timeline books, which I'll link down below if I remember. So I think that one might really play to my personal interests. And then the final person on this list, which means I think I actually have 11 rather than 10, but hey, one extra, that's always fine, is Christina Henry. Now, Christina Henry is another one who is a YA author very well known for her fairy tale retellings, and I've read her book Lost Boys 2 years ago now, yes, and really, really enjoyed it. Since then, she's both, like, her back catalogue includes one from The Little Mermaid, she's done a whole series about Alice, I think there's a Red Riding Hood one in there, and she's really, really well known and beloved on BookTube, and I think it's time to go back to some of her back catalogue and give it another read. Also, her books are absolutely beautiful, so again, I just kind of want a bigger collection of them on my shelves. I don't know which direction I'm going to go. The ones about Alice are very much her popular ones, they'll be here, but actually I'm kind of keen on the mermaid idea. I think it's going to be cute, and if I remember correctly, it's set in a circus, which given my previous circus background always appeals in book form, so that could be tempting. So that is it from me. I'm going to get off this camera before the light completely fades. My camera's doing amazingly well, but I'm standing in like near total darkness because the sun is rapidly setting on me. So we're going to get a thumbnail taken super quick, and then I'm going to get out of here. Are there any authors in 2020 that you really want to read, and do you have any recommendations with these authors of where to start or where to maybe avoid based on my reading tastes? Do let me know in the comments down below, and I'll chat to you soon. Have a wonderful week. Bye guys!